This is Jim Moore, the president and CEO of the Washington Institute for Business Governance Society. I'm absolutely delighted that we have with us today former president of Poland, Aleksander Kwaśniewski, who is also a member of our advisory council. And he has been in the midst of one of the most extraordinary moments, I think, in modern history. So thank you so much for being with us. I'm really looking forward to the coming our dialogue with one another this morning.
Hello. It's nice to see you again, Jim. I remember our last meeting. It was many years ago, and now I'm at your disposal.
Well, thank you so much. You know, as I was beginning to mention, had been very much involved with the former Soviet Union in negotiating the last trade and economic agreement with that country before it really returned to 15 separate republics. But I'm so fascinated. You for 10 years was president of Poland, and you had an awful lot of back and forth with Vladimir Putin during that period of time. Given what we're now facing, I'm wondering from your perspective, has he changed, or is he the same person that you were dealing with when you were in office? And trying to really explain why it is that he obviously decided to invade the Ukraine at this particular moment.
Well, so I think Putin is the same person and different person as well. So I was close with Putin this period, 2000-2005. He was a new president. I was a president in the second term, so a little bit senior president. We had a lot of conversations. Some of them were very, very lengthy, very, very honest. And I tell you, Putin, those time, I remember very well our conversation 2002. He told me that one of his main goals, his dreams, let's say, was to rebuild Great Russia. So in such sense, this man didn't change his main idea. This Great Russia means Russia in sense of Soviet Union, without ideology, without communist ideology, but also in sense of Tsarist Russia. But why the different person as well? Because I think in the period 2000-2004 until Orange Revolution, this great Russia idea was his dream. After 2004, it became to be his plan. And after 2014, after annexation of Crimea, that is his obsession. And I think that's the problem with today's Putin. He's a man of a dream, of a plan, and of an obsession as well. He's different because during my time of meetings, he was quite open. He was ready to listen. He was very natural in his reaction. Today, after 22 years in power, he is an isolated person, in my opinion, out of the reality, without advisors, not believing advisors, and also what is important, without family. He has no one person in his environment who can mitigate him, who is enough brave to say to Putin, Volodya, you are wrong. That is wrong what you are doing. And therefore he is today much more dangerous, much more unpredictable as he was in this period 2000-2005. So briefly speaking, I met probably with Putin number 1. Today we can watch the Putin number 4 or number 5, and that's the problem.
Is it fair to say, given what you just shared, that because he didn't have people around him to give him the truth, that he effectively has miscalculated what he was doing?
Yes, that's my feeling, that he has not such person, because the generals are enough brave to tell him what is going in Ukraine. I think the problem is even more serious because, you know, public media in Russia are fully under control of Kremlin. And unfortunately, Putin believes this information, which are coming from this totally controlled Russian official TV or something like that. So he has really not enough serious and information. And that is the reason why he must miscalculated so many things. But the general idea, the general strategy to have entire Ukraine in the zone of Russian influence, or even more as a part of Russia, that is nothing new. That is something what is very, very from the very beginning, one of the main goals of Putin.
Yes. How would you assess where the crisis is right now as far as the war?
Well, I tell you, first it's necessary to say that for me it was because I knew about this understanding of Ukraine by Putin. He said many times that Ukraine for him is not a state. Ukrainians are not a nation. So this negative approach to Ukraine was not a surprise for me. Surprise for me was that he decided to start this war, because I think that is that's a historical mistake. This is a real tragedy, and Russia will pay very high cost of this decision, and also personally Putin will pay highest price. Maybe not in front of some tribunals, but historically, his position will be somewhere between Stalin and Hitler. What shouldn't be his dream as a president and as a politician. But he decided to do it, and I'm very much afraid that he will try to finish this war with some kind of success. And today, to define what is a success is very difficult, because one thing we know very well: this concept of blitzkrieg didn't happen. I think the first idea of Putin was to organize 3 days, 7 days war, to be with Russian troops in Kiev, to arrest or to eliminate Zelensky and his government, to install in Moscow, in Kiev, pro-Moscow government, probably with Medvedchuk as a leader of this team. That didn't happen and will never happen. Today, to speak what can be such, let's say, predictable, let's say, success of Putin, maybe that is to have Donetsk region fully under Russian control, Lugansk region as well, and to have this corridor to Crimea. Yes. And that is possible military to achieve, but not easy first and not quickly. Mm-hmm. I think this is a question of many weeks or months of fight. But that is one scenario. Probably among all very bad scenarios, this one is maybe not so bad. But I think we can have a very bad scenario that Putin will try to have entire Ukraine, and he will try to attack Kiev again. Maybe he will try to use mass destruction weapon. The question is what Putin wants to do with tactical nuclear weapon. He's ready to use it or not. We don't know. So I think this worst scenario is such full-scale attack against Ukraine, maybe against Moldova as well, and really that is something what can be the beginning of real world war, because yes. Because if this escalation of the war will be continued, I think the West, the NATO, will respond. I don't know in which form, but will respond.
Well, a year ago, there seemed to have been a certain amount of fractiousness as far as NATO was concerned. There was real questions about its future. Clearly, NATO has come together. And are you somewhat surprised by the number of countries that have become allies overnight of the Ukraine?
Yeah, I think that is next of miscalculations of Putin. I think he was informed by some, maybe even by Lavrov, that if he will start this war, NATO will be disintegrated, will be not ready to find some unity for political reaction. I think they had the same opinion about European Union. And what we see from the first day of the war that the European Union and NATO were never more united as now. And I think what is absolutely new element and new quality of the situation, that is something what probably 6 months ago or 1 year ago would be absolutely impossible, that majority of Finns and majority of Swedes are ready to accept NATO membership of these countries.
Yes. Yes.
I know Sweden, I know Finland quite well, and I knew very well that neutrality was a part of their mentality. It was
Yes.
a part of this national DNA of Finns and Swedes. And we have a good chance to have these two countries, very well-organized countries, quite rich countries, with good armies as well, next some months as members of NATO. That is absolutely new era, we can say. So I think if we will keep this unity as the West, as a democratic world, we have a chance to support Ukraine enough to win, or partly to win, or to win partly this war.
Yes. Well, we all awoke this morning here on this side of the planet to find that that Russia has cut off Poland and Bulgaria in terms of its gas imports or exports, and the response that has come from officials has certainly been very encouraging. Where there is a sense that you'll be able to get through this period, that there are other ways to be able to handle the energy situation. Fortunately, we're out of winter and we're going into spring, so that has certainly an impact. Do you think it has been a mistake for Europe generally to feel very comfortable in getting as much of their energy supplies out of Russia as they have over time?
From today's perspective, it is a mistake, of course.
Yes.
But I tell you, I think the problem with Russia, maybe not here in Poland, because we have a long history with Russia. We were partitioned by Russia. We were under Russian control, Soviet control after World War II. So Polish politics and we were without naivety. And I tell you that the politics of many Western countries, including United States, had this element of naivety. I remember all these ideas of reset offered by American administration, and answer from Moscow was very, very poor for that. I remember this Ostpolitik from Berlin, and the main idea was that if we'll have Russia closer to us, we have better chances to civilize or to democratize Russia. Today we see that it was a mistake, because Putin wasn't interested about democratization of this country. Even Medvedev, who was in short period president of Russia, he was not very much interested about liberalization of this country. So today we see Russia again, very imperialistic, very tough, against rule of laws, against human rights, violated brothers and sisters in Ukraine. So I think it was our naivety, it was our mistake. Yeah. Yeah. And I tell you, Russia had, and today is important, because Putin decided even to cut this very, very long time Russian doctrine, let's say. I remember my conversation with Putin many years ago. He told me, you should be very, very relaxed with our supplies of gas and oil, because even if we have some political tensions, we will do it. He gave me very, very strong argument. Alexander, you know that Nazis troops, Hitler's troops, attacking Soviet Union 41, they used Soviet gasoline and Soviet oil. So it means it was such guarantee that politics is politics, but Soviet Union before and Russia now, they will treat energy supplies as a business, not without so much political elements, not as a political weapon.
Yes.
Today,
Yes.
we see that all these supplies are political weapon. And I think that is a very important day for us in Europe to understand that that is not a business as usual. That is not a normal situation.
Mhm.
Poland is better prepared for this because we decided to diversify our supplies many years ago. So, of course, it will be the problem for us, but we have our reserves for next month. We will open soon a pipeline from Norway, and it will help us very much. And last years we built special place, on the coast for liquid gas from Qatar. So I think we will survive, especially what you mentioned. The weather will be better. We will have a summer, so the gas consumption will be not so huge. But of course, I think politically, and I expect that our government will start to prepare public opinion that the winter can be complicated, because to replace such even smaller amount of Russian deliveries immediately is impossible. So I think the winter 2022-23 in Europe will be quite complicated.
Yes, indeed. By the way, I'm delighted to see the ribbon that you have on your coat with the Ukrainian colors. Tell me, what is your assessment of President Zelensky and how Ukraine has been able to handle itself up to this point?
I tell you, I know Ukraine very well because I'm involved in Ukrainian issues since the independence of Ukraine.
Yes, indeed.
91, so that's more than 30 years. I was one of the leading person during Orange Revolution as a Polish president. I organized this roundtable talks in Kiev, and we found this solution what to do with falsified presidential election. 2012-13, I was a special envoy of European Parliament to Kiev. I was very much engaged in the process to release political prisoners during Yanukovych time. So I know Ukraine very, very well. And even knowing Ukraine so well, I'm extremely surprised how Ukraine is fighting today. That is unbelievable. That is something what is great and highest respect for them, because Ukrainian people, Ukrainian soldiers, and Ukrainian generals are very, very smart, are well prepared, well educated, and what is necessary to underline, they have a very, very special experience because they are in the state of the war since 2014. They have 8 years experience, and this experience we can see now. They are much more experienced as Russians officers today. Secondly, the some small advantage of Ukrainians, especially Ukrainian soldiers, is that they understand Russian, they speak Russian, and Russians, they don't understand Ukrainian. That is important.
Sure,
because that's the Russians, they cannot have a secrets. That everything is very, very, very immediately and in the real time understood by Ukrainians. What concerns Zelensky, I know Zelensky also very well. I met him when he was a showman once in my life. It was, I think, 2016 or 17. I participated in his show, even, and he's a very talented person. And I think today's situation is very much because he's a brave man, because frankly speaking, to be actor, to be comedian, to decide to run for the presidency, it means that you are a brave man. Of course, he's still very not experienced politician because he's only 2 years as a president. Yes. But during this time, he shows to all of us three fantastic skills. The first, he's a brave person. Second, he understands very well that because I'm not so experienced, I have to share this job correctly. So the generals are doing their own job, the war, and Zelensky is the communicator. He is a leader of the nation. And I tell you, and that is point number 3, he as a communicator, he's a man of the show, is the best in the world. I know Really, that's true. I remember my talk with some of journalists, and he asked me, "Is true, Mr. Kwaśniewski, that Zelensky is supporting by very famous PR company from the United States?" I started to laugh. I said, "Look, in my opinion, America needs such PR man as Zelensky, not the opposite, because he's much better as all these PR companies, because this is his job."
Agreed.
And if you see his speeches, they are not too long. They have very clear message, and they are full of determination. They are full of energy, with such conviction about the victory, etc. So, frankly speaking, as a man of the war, as a leader of the war, Zelensky is absolutely the best. He is ready, or that is a good question. Is he ready to be also good leader for negotiations or for the peace? That's for me question mark.
Sure.
Because I think for him, the problem of negotiations probably is the most complicated and the most risky. Because if Putin will have this Donetsk, Lugansk, etc., and this corridor to Crimea, and Putin will propose to some kind of peace negotiation, etc., I think such talks are impossible to accept for Zelensky.
Yes.
Zelensky cannot say to all these very patriotic Ukrainians today, for all these soldiers, all these civilians fighting, that he's ready to resign of Donetsk, Lugansk, Crimea, etc. So I think during the time of the war, Zelensky is fantastic leader, but the biggest problems are coming, especially if some kind of peace negotiations will be open, and especially if he will have some pressure from the West that is necessary to participate in such unequal agreement talks.
I know this is a difficult and very sensitive question, but do you think at the end of the day, resolution of this can only come if Ukraine gives up some of its own territory?
Well, it would be great if Ukraine would win and would have again these regions, but I think it doesn't seem very realistic. So I think the best what we can achieve now and is to be back in the situation from 24th of February. So this year. So it means that Russia is controlling part of Donetsk and Lugansk, and other places are in Ukrainian hands. But I tell you, how to make, how to organize, how to be back by Ukrainians, Kherson or Mariupol, which are today under full control, or like Mariupol, almost full control of Russia. That is an open question. Because militarily speaking, Ukrainians cannot have an open front against Russia, because they are good in some kind of partisan war with small units, very maneuvering, etc. If Ukrainians will go on the open space with tanks and soldiers, they have no chances because they have not enough planes. They have, and Russian planes will destroy all these units. So, and having such type of fight, which is much more defensive fight, not offensive battle, this is very difficult to go back to Kherson and to keep control over this city again.
Yes. Tell me on a slightly different direction, how would you assess the role that the United States has taken, and what is your perception of what the Biden administration has done, as well as the United States Congress, in being able to deal with all this?
Well, I tell you, that is the next serious miscalculation of Putin, because I think in his mind was that America is weak. Biden is not enough young to be a strong leader in this situation. And I think what Biden is doing, President Biden is doing, what American administration is doing, that's very good. That is absolutely crucial in this fight, because in this situation, we can offer to Ukrainians three things: full political support, America is doing. Second, military support, and America is doing a lot. The main supplies are coming from the United States, and that is very modern equipment. And what is also very good, that we know after these 2 months of the war, that Ukrainians, they know very well how to use it. That is not wasted money or wasted equipment. And third point is humanitarian support. And on all these 3 levels, I have to say, America is doing fantastic things, and Biden is really great leader of this situation now.
Good. And you think that the image of the United States as a result of all of this has been elevated in terms of its leadership? Yes.
Yes,
good.
yes, I have no doubt, especially after Afghanistan, after Kabul.
Yes.
That is absolutely new picture. That is a picture of really strong America, strong leadership, according the principles, according our values, and uniting us. It's also very important. This Biden leadership is uniting us, and that's absolutely
That's incredible.
Crucial factor.
You know, I think the very first surprise that Americans have had are, as you were mentioning, the Ukrainians have been so fierce and committed to being able to take on Russia at this moment. The second biggest surprise, I have to say, that most Americans have been thinking about, and that is about Poland itself. That now over 3 million refugees from Ukraine have gone into Poland, and that the homes of the Polish people have been open to these individuals. And it's truly extraordinary. I don't think that was something that a lot of people would have predicted, but Poland has been absolutely extraordinary in the way that it's handled the humanitarian crisis.
Yes, absolutely right. You know, in very short time, 2.5 million people crossed our border. It was not many months, it was during 7-10 days. And I tell you, reaction of the Polish people were absolutely great, because they organized support for these people and close to the border with some, you know, food, drinks, etc. Then they invited them to own houses. We organized so-called reception points in many cities. In Warsaw, you know, Warsaw is a city with 1.7 million people, and we have 300,000 Ukrainians now. 300,000. You know,
Wow.
during the visit to Poland, President Biden offered 100,000 visas, 100,000 visas for Ukrainians, what is a nice gesture. We appreciate it very much. But how to compare 100,000 to United States and 300,000 in Warsaw only, and more than 2 million in Poland. So I think reaction is great. Of course, we were prepared for that because something around 1 million Ukrainians were working and living in Poland in the last, let's say, 10 years. And this presence of Ukrainians never created some conflicts. It was very useful for Polish economy, etc. So it was such factor which prepared Poles, such ordinary Poles, to understand that Ukrainians are very close to us culturally, religiously, etc. And of course, it works. I think the system organized by local authorities is really good. A lot of NGOs are very much engaged. Foundation of my wife is working very closely with, because she's charity. She set up a charity foundation. This foundation is very close with refugees. We organize relocation of the refugees, support, help, etc. So that is a great movement of the people. That's good. What is a problem? That's, you know, this situation probably is for many months. And today, me in Polish TV or in Polish media, if I have a chance, I appeal to Polish people to be patient. Yes. Because, you know, to be in such full of energy, emotionally open 1 week is okay, 1 month is possible. But if we have to continue the situation with Ukrainian guests at own houses for 6 months, 1 year, and maybe longer, that can be a problem. But I'm sure that we are ready to manage it. So you know what is also maybe interesting information for you. Poland, one of our ideas, demographic ideas, was that Poland should have more than 40 million people. And we never achieved this level. It was 38, 39, then 1 million Poles decided to go to the West after entry to the European Union. Finally, now with Ukrainians, we have more than 40 million people. population in Poland is finally more than 40. So that's the next of consequences of the situation.
To the point that you just made, I'm wondering, what do you think of the attention span of the West in being able to deal with the Ukrainian situation? There are some that say, everybody's united today, but with time, that is going to dissipate. You have countries like Hungary and Serbia, which perhaps are more pro-Russian than their neighbors, and so that causes a little bit of fractiousness. But trying to anticipate the long term, how long can the attention span of the allies of Ukraine today continue?
It's a good question, and I tell you, Serbia is maybe not so big problem now because Serbia is not a member of European Union. They are not a member of NATO, and historically they are very close, and also religiously they are very close to Russia and the Orthodox Church. Hungary is a different point because that's Mr. Orban, and his politics is very pro-Putin's politics, and that's a problem. And we'll have some difficult discussions with Mr. Orban. But with respect to Hungary, that is not the biggest country of Europe. The main problem is what Germany will do, what France will do, what UK will do, Italy, etc. And what you mentioned is a problem because if this war, if this conflict is long-lasting conflict, and I think it is, of course, the problem how to keep such full attention and full support for so long time will be a problem. Yes. But I hope that after all this, because my general feeling is that the world after 21st of February, after the beginning of the aggression of Russia against Ukraine, will be different. So we understood much more as we knew before. And I think this word, I don't know, probably partly for better, partly for worse, but will be different. And I hope that this unity we can keep as long as we'll have this open or frozen conflict, aggression from Russian side, very aggressive politics against other countries like Moldova or Baltic states. All this, as long as Russia will use all these supplies as a political weapon, when we will have such aggressive politics of Putin and Putin himself as the leader of this country, because I have no doubts that Putin is a war criminal. After everything what he did, that his place is in Hague or in some other international tribunals. So I think that we can keep this unity. We can continue sanctions against Russia. We should be very careful in all kinds of negotiations because Russians, they are not fair negotiators. They are liars, and they will try to misuse these negotiations, etc. So I think the problem exists. I don't underestimate the problem. What you ask me, yes. But I hope this unity in this concrete situation we can continue. I tell you frankly speaking, of course we are still 2 months after the war, but I cannot imagine today that some who from serious politicians in the West can say next 2-3 months that we can make a business with Russia as usual, because in my opinion that is maybe next 5 years, but next month I cannot imagine.
Yes, indeed. Well, this past Sunday, we had the runoff election in France, in which Emmanuel Macron was able to win re-election, and he's the first person in over 20 years, to have been re-elected as president of France. Do you think that he is essentially has assumed the role of being a leader for Western Europe, for the European Union?
Well, I think yes. First of all, very good that he won, because I tell you, if Madame Le Pen would win, we would have absolutely dramatic situation, and that the
Yes.
unity of Europe would be questioned very much. Macron is a pro-European person. He's a European politician, and I think he understands Europe very well. And he's in second term and last term, and he's still a young man. And I think his ambitions should be to make Europe stronger and to be, after his presidency, one of the leaders of this European Union in the future. So I believe that he's enough clever to make such good European policy. He's enough experience, because after 5 years of the presidency, he knows everybody and he knows the procedures and the situation much better. I hope only that he will be not so much naive towards Putin as Russia as he was, let's say, 5 years ago, because you know, and he has a very personal argument to be not naive, because before the war and after the war, he spoke by phone with Putin, I don't know, a dozen times or more, and everything what he heard from Putin was a lie. So
Yes.
because Putin told him, no, I'm not interested about the war, you know. And if explanation of Putin that this is no war, that is not a war because that is a special military operation, that is a lie, because we know that Putin started brutal war, brutal violence against the peaceful and innocent country, Ukraine, and they killed a lot of civilians. They killed women and children. They destroyed hospitals. They destroyed houses. You know, Macron knows everything. So I think he should change his approach to Putin and his politics, because of course we need Russia, but we need democratic and predictable Russia as a part of global world and not aggressors.
Yes. You know, you were talking earlier about President Zelensky's sense of public relations, how he articulates things, et cetera. One of the great metaphors, I think, for this period is going to be that visual of Vladimir Putin meeting with all these people, including most recently the Secretary General of the United Nations, in which he's sitting at the end of a table that is so far apart. It looks like a runway at an airport. I mean, it's rather extraordinary. And you see with President Zelensky, he's throwing his arms around individuals when they come to visit, and it's a whole different persona than what we're seeing with Vladimir Putin.
Yes, I think that I absolutely agree that is a metaphor of these two words. Which are fighting. President Biden, during his speech in Warsaw, he said important thing, and that's true. That is not only the war between Ukraine and between Russia or Russia against Ukraine. That is the war between democracy and autocracy, and I think that is really a serious problem for the future. Because Russia is not only one authoritarian regime in the world. We have China, we have some other places, maybe not so dangerous because are not so big. But I think this fight, political, ideological fight between autocracy and democracy is a problem for next decades. The ideological confrontation between communism and democracy was finished in 1991. And then we had something around 20 years of such optimism, progress with democracy, etc. This period, which started before the war, but which has this very hot phase now after 24th of February, that is this fight between democracy and autocracy. And this metaphor, this picture, Zelensky surrounded by the people and 10 meters table between Putin and his interlocutors, that is also the metaphor of this fight and the values. What means democracy, you know, the dialogue with the people, and what means autocracy, distance, isolation, no dialogue at all. So I think that is correct if you want to make this fight, this confrontation visible. That's a good metaphor.
I realize that we are getting to the end of our conversation this morning here in the United States, this afternoon for you, right now in Warsaw, which I regret very much. But tell me this, what is your frame of mind with all that's transpiring? You know, you have gone through such an evolution yourself, having been the sports minister of Poland at a different time, a different age. You became then the president for an entire decade. You now are able to view things from the past as well as the present and the future. I'm wondering, are you optimistic as to the current situation, or are you pessimistic? And what's your outlook for what the world should look forward to? And you know, one of the things that I hate seeing back here in the United States is this speculation of whether or not we're entering World War III. And when all of a sudden you hear Lavrov talking about using nuclear weapons, et cetera, I mean, it's very chilling. And so I really would be fascinated by what your thoughts are on as far as your outlook for the future.
Well, I tell you, you know, that's his such famous sentence. Who is a pessimist? You know, the pessimist is a well-informed optimist. So by nature, I'm optimist, and I would like to see some optimistic scenarios, solutions, etc. But it's very difficult to be optimistic now. I think the time of optimism. I'm representative to some extent of this generation of politicians with such very optimistic approach and very positive results. I think Clinton had such situation, Tony Blair, myself, you know, collapse of Soviet Union was very optimistic. Beginning of market economy in our country is optimistic issue, democracy as well, etc. Membership in NATO, membership in the European Union, a lot of such very positive achievements, very optimistic mood, etc. But let's look at the 21st century. See, we have a long list of serious crises and serious dramas. And I think the time of optimism is unfortunately over, because we had a financial crisis 7-8. After that, we had a Brexit. After that, migration crisis. After migration crisis, COVID, the pandemic, and now we have a war. So look, that's since 2007, that is 15 years, we have first of all problems, crisis, etc. So to be very optimistic or to be optimistic, that is not easy. But of course, this war can be very dramatic if Putin, out of the reality, will decide to use mass destruction weapon, biological, chemical, or nuclear. That it would be really the world war, I have no doubt, because if he will use even tactical nuclear weapon, the response should be similar. But to be, at the end of our conversation, a little bit optimistic, is necessary to say, still a lot depends on us. It's not so that we have no chances. If we will be united as a Western world, if we will fight for our values, democracy, human rights, territorial integrity, etc., will be good. If we'll have enough power to decide concretely and at time what is necessary to do, how we have to support Ukraine today, this is first of all political support, military supplies, and humanitarian support. We can do a lot, and that is not so that Putin will win and that is decided. No, in my opinion, Putin will lose. That is decided. I fully agree with Antony Blinken, who said Ukraine is not a winner still, but Russia is a loser for sure, because after everything what Putin decided to do, they have no chances to be normal country, respected and accepted by majority of the countries in the world. Russia will have a problem, internal problem with the economy, etc. I think that is my answer, short answer on your question. The reasons for optimism is very few, but the power which we have still as a democratic countries, as the democratic citizens, democratic leaders, is still enough strong to fight and to win.
Yes, indeed. Well, our own Secretary of State, who, as you know, who just returned with the Secretary of Defense from visiting with President Zelensky, was remarked that Ukraine will be around much longer than Putin will be in power in Russia. And that was an interesting perspective. But Alexander Kwaśniewski, it has been wonderful to be able to spend this time with you today. And we've been thinking about you. We've been watching so much of what's transpiring in your part of the world. We're concerned. And I think that that Poland was very lucky to have had you for 10 years at the helm and to be able to have a perspective that is important to allow others to really gain from your perspective. So thank you so much for being with us. We wish you all the best. We wish your wife and her foundation all the best. And we look forward to spending more time with you in the future.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and all the best for you in this complicated time.
You bet. Take good care. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.